it is not your job to make sure that the printer drum is sitting right and the printer, there needs to be somebody in school to alleviate that so the teachers can get on with the job of being the IT coordinator as the technologist.
How are you doing, Hassan and Dermot? Here we are for another webinar. And this week we're going to talk about ICT infrastructure and I suppose planning for summer works, and then I suppose we've got to think about the in school planning and then sort of considering the remote learning challenges that we have. And obviously I suppose if we were compared to this time last year when you would have maybe started doing planning, we've been catapulted into a whole different sphere. So now it's like sort of settle down a little bit and just see what we have to think about in the future. Would that be fair to say, Dermot?
100%, Helen. Yeah. Look, we are planning for what to do, I suppose, with our ICT grants. That is certainly one element of it, or one aspect of it. And then we need to look at further provisions for online learning as well, don't we? And how we're going to continue with that.
This evening we have Hassan, and Hassan is going to come front of camera, so to speak. And Hassan has huge amount of IT infrastructure experience in the work that he does. So Hassan is in the hot seat tonight. So that's basically where we're at. Hassan, do you want to add anything at this point?
Other than thanks very much. Delighted to be here. Nervous for the first time. I've been doing this for weeks now, months. I'm nervous now. It's an interesting time, and infrastructure-wise, we need to be thinking, what do we get? But the bigger picture is, what's this going to look like when the pandemic is over? How is the blended learning going to work? And what equipment do we need to get to best complement both in-house or best complement both blended learning in schools?
So Dermot, do you want to, we start off, you have got a little video from at a primary school sort of perspective.
Yeah, thanks for that, Helen. What I'm going to do is just show you a short video on the steps that we have taken over the past 3 years in order to build our digital infrastructure. And then we're at a stage now where we're beginning to plan for the next series of steps. And thank God Hassan is here, because I might be able to get some free legal advice. In this video, we're going to look at our own example of how we built our existing digital infrastructure. As you can see from the picture here, this is us, St. Patrick's National School, Cornanuel, Island, just outside Castlebar in County Mayo. We are a 3-teacher school, and as you can see in that picture, there are 2 parts to our building. The front part is the original school building, which was built in 1896, and behind that then there's an extension of 2 larger classrooms. They were built in 2006, and then more recently we have been granted 2 new classrooms, so we'll be modernising our whole campus. So step 1 then, when we began looking at the school, we first of all identified that there was a need for faster broadband within the school. At the time it was about 8 or 10 megs download speed, which was okay, but not as sufficient as we wanted for what we were intending on doing over the past 3 years and into the future. So this meant obviously approaching the local supplier, who are Westnet. It also meant that we had to purchase a 1 gig switch in the school so we could handle our upgraded broadband. We currently have 100 meg broadband, which is fantastic, and that obviously changes a lot of what we can do within the school. After we upgraded our broadband, we then identified there was a need for more IP addresses, so we approached HEANet, and we wanted a network capacity that would be capable of managing more than 64 devices at one time. When we had the extra IP addresses granted, we then installed wireless access points So as we move around our campus, we remain on the one network, which gives us a bit of freedom of movement then outside of the classroom with our digital devices. Step 3, then we identified a need for better laptops, and we approached a company down in Cork called PFH, and we purchased 15 Chromebooks because one of the main bugbears of the teachers at the time was the startup speed of the laptops. By the time that some of them had started up, the lesson was nearly finished. So we purchased Chromebooks, which load up, I think when you press the button, you're logged in within 8 seconds. So that all contributes to an ease of access. Step 4, then we identified a need for a collaborative platform. We considered Office 365 and G Suite. We went for G Suite, and then we provided in-school training for the students and the teachers in both administration and in teaching and learning. Step 5, then, once we had the first 4 steps completed, we could begin to enhance what we were doing. So we concentrated on Scratch, Microsoft Make code. We felt that when the kids could develop pre-programming skills in those areas, then we could begin to extend that into external objects such as makey-makeys and microbits. Once they got familiar with those, then we moved them on to the Internet of Things kits and the smart home kits. We purchased them from SG Education in Sligo. And our next steps then, so we're building 2 new classrooms. We need to replace 2 interactive whiteboards. We have some laptops that are running Windows 10 slowly, so we're going to change their operating system. We're looking at Chrome OS and Neverware. Then we're moving into Moodle, and we're building a kind of an enhanced online learning platform there for recording children's progress and recording notes and communication. And then we're investigating e-learning software as well, because over the past lockdown and the previous lockdown, there has been a lot of valuable resources created by the teachers. So we're looking at how we can integrate those now into an e-learning platform.
I think you did it. You did the right approach, in that it was planned, and it was planned in the right direction. Sometimes we forget, and I see it all the time when I go into schools where ICT grant comes in, and we'll just mention the ICT grant because it's an easy target. But the ICT grant comes in, and you go, right, we need to buy some laptops. Whereas you kind of went, hold on a minute, there's internet coming in to the school. Let's get that sorted first. Now that the internet and the internet infrastructure is working within the school, before even a laptop sits on it, now how can we build on top of that? And when we build on top of that, then it's the laptop or Chromebook, whichever, but it has to be fit for purpose. So you thought about a Chromebook suits our needs. There's other schools that go, well, actually an iPad will suit our needs based on what the teachers are looking for. And then there's Surface Pros, late to the party, but still at the party. And they serve an awful lot of needs as well. But you have to have the platform, or you have to have the infrastructure for that platform to sit on top of it. And then it was interesting to see, then you went, okay, now how can we use our technology? So even though there was technology at the start, it was until you went into microbits and Scratch and Makey and Make Code, it was the tech. Now we're going to decide what we can put on our devices. So if those devices were going into secondary schools, maybe Makey wouldn't be a thing for them. Maybe it should be OneNote would be a priority to get OneNote onto those devices, or if there were iPads, a device management solution. So yeah, it's really interesting. It's a step-by-step exact workflow on it's how to do it. Helen, from a secondary school point of view, how are you coping with the planning, and how do you look forward when you're constantly patching?
Very good question. So I suppose I would agree absolutely with you, Dermot and Hassan. infrastructure is key, and like you've got to, so how do we look? So I would say have your infrastructure there, have your broadband, and I always say it's like working on, the way you say you're always painting the Golden Gate Bridge. It's exactly the same with your IT infrastructure, because it's like one of my IT, we outsource to an IT company, says it's just moving parts the whole time. So you're working on one part. So the infrastructure has to be there. It's critical, and to have that in place, and then you can go on, as Dermot is saying, getting your laptops, getting your device and stuff. And it's hardware and software. I'm the IT coordinator in, as I say, in a secondary school, and we're in Dublin. And the reason I just sort of highlight that is that our broadband is like, it's through PDST, it's satellite. But one of the key problems we had was that it was line of sight. Okay, there was this tree, okay, that was in the autumn, and if it was raining, it was obstructing our line of sight. And so we, like, in fairness now to PDST and our broadband, like the program provider, that we had to move the dish, but it took us ages to work out what the actual problem was. So I suppose my learning from all of that is we thought it was our network, but actually it was the hardware outside. So the key learning is, don't necessarily think you have to look at everything. The whole environment is the hardware. It might not necessarily just be your network. And anyway, so it was moved, and it was much more stable. But we're actually in the process of getting fiber, and we are so delighted to be in that position. But I suppose the point I'm trying to make is, yes, there's issues all over the country about broadband, but we're in the sort of the heart of Dublin. And we were having, sometimes terrible network issues because of a tree. Yeah. But anyway, infrastructure is key. I'm the IT coordinator for about 7 years now, so I've seen it building up and all of the things, and it does take a long time to build it up. I'm very proud of where we are now, but it takes time and money and leadership, and your board of management and your principal and the senior management to see the importance of investment. And I know certainly through that first lockdown, I kept every day, I said, thank goodness we updated and we did things, because we were able to keep going. So it is really, really important to have your digital planning in place. In this short video, I want to explore the planning and the thought that has to go into maintaining and upgrading your IT infrastructure. So the go-to place is PDST, Technology and Education website. So that's the link there. And really the first place to go is to look at planning. So what's important, whether you're primary or post-primary, is to be aware of the resources that are there in terms of planning and the digital learning framework. So you can, these are fully detailed here. There's lots of webinars, and last year and the previous year, there would have been rolled out in terms of face-to-face webinars. What's really important as well is the dlplanning.ie website, and there's templates that you can follow in planning and supports that you can follow there. So that is really, really important to fill in, and that would also be part of your SIP plan for a school. On foot of that, then, when you delve down a little bit deeper, and in terms of where you need, what you have to consider is, now we have the added layer of not only being planning for being in school, but also planning for distance learning as well. So that obviously has brought huge challenges to schools at all levels and in the past year. Also, then there's to be conscious of security, GDPR issues, and so on, particularly if you're using different cloud-based applications and platforms. Purchasing considerations, grants, all of these are outlined here. So essentially the point here is that this is a brilliant resource to look at, and to be conscious of that. In terms of sort of day-to-day use, and I was trying to think as an IT coordinator, what is it like from a user perspective? So I see there's 4 types of users. There's students, admin staff, teachers, and parents guardians. From their perspective, most of the time, they're working through cloud-based applications and/or platforms. They could be using classroom PCs laptops, hybrid tablets, smartphones, and USB sticks are still around, and that's sometimes that's no harm, but we need to be conscious of security issues. Depending on what their uses are, certainly admin staff and teachers would have phones, so it might be, VoIP phones or analog phones. These are things to consider. Photocopier, printer, scanners, printers, and then projectors, and keeping a track of those remote controls. I think also what's highlighted over the past years, keeping any spare monitors you have, so that you can extend your screen on laptops. So essentially, these are just sort of the perspectives that all of these different users have, and all of the demands that from an IT coordinator point of view, in terms of keeping software updated, hardware updated. So if we look under the hood a little bit, we have our infrastructure. So sort of starting from the outside in, cloud-based applications and platforms and websites, and so whatever is needed for teaching and learning, and financial websites and so on. So coming through the PDST firewall, it might be through satellite, and increasingly through fiber, in through a router, and then you might have your own firewall here as well. Certainly once we sort of come on the inside, keeping an eye, updating your that router is coming through PDST, making sure that's updated and working with the externals. Firewall, again, making sure that your social filtering is in place if you have one internally, updating it from hardware and software perspective. You may have a server, and if you still have a server, having a UPS as well in case there's a power cut. Ensuring that your switches are as up to date as you possibly can afford, so that you can get the most throughput, so that we can get the power out to the PCs, and ensuring that your PCs in terms of software and hardware are updated, your printers, your photocopiers, and then also your Wi-Fi access points, making sure that they're working, that they're broadcasting, and that your whole network is not being is sort of, I suppose, primed to work as best as it possibly can. So there's a lot of demands on the network infrastructure anyway, and even so more so now with distance learning.
Helen, what software did you use to lay it all out like that? That's very cool.
Well, I found out that was it's called draw.io, and I'd use that in computer science, and I was just messing around looking for that, and there's all these images in there for network stuff. So I kind of thought, hey, this is kind of cool. And
because you went deep, like you went, I was looking at that going, I haven't seen diagrams like that since, well, I should be looking at them more often, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's draw.io. It's free, and I'm sure some of other it was a computer science lecture. Dr. Frank Levin, I have to give him full credit. He pointed it out to me, and I know that lots of computer science teachers would use it just for flow charts and stuff, but you can go in there and you can do lots of different things. So it's great.
I like it. And it looks like it's a Google property, is it?
No, I don't think it necessarily is, I'm not sure, So yeah, so as you see, it kind of fits into what you're saying, Dermot and Hassan, it's just, it's the hardware, and the software. And, it takes time. Like you might be able to afford to update, a switch this year, or, so that ICT grant is really, really important. Like another year, it might be, upgrading your phone system, or, getting color photocopiers, or having PIN numbers for, and there's all these different things. And as I say, it takes, you've got in that learning, in your digital learning framework plan, you have to focus on what's right. And I think it's interesting, I know in a couple of weeks we're going to be looking at Selfie and Deirdre Hodson and, the CESI conference. So that is, where you're looking not only from the infrastructure point of view, but what the users need and what their requirements are. And in actual fact, when in that video there, I wasn't even talking about, like students having their own devices, because that we certainly, we were very nervous last summer about when students were coming back. We had never had every single, like the students had phones and teachers had had their like laptops or whatever they had, but we didn't have all students with devices, and we didn't know how our network was going to withstand. And it was, how to say, it was challenged. And, you know, so we had to, you know, we do have a third party IT company that helps us. And we did have to get the network engineers to come in, and we had to analyze, you know, how the broadcasting and how the network was working. So we did have to configure that. So I suppose, again, it's just going back to my analogy, you're always working on it. And it's like that Golden Gate Bridge. There's something that has to be fixed at all times. And just, I think once you accept that, then, you know, off you go. Would you say that, Hassan?
Yeah, I think so. My biggest difficulty with some of the schools that I'm in, it's sticking to the plan. That's hard, and it's very hard to spend money on what is invisible. So switches, Wi-Fi. You just spent $5,000 on what? Do you know? And most schools that I've been in, because I'm lucky enough to be working in a school. I work in a school a day a week. Like, my job didn't exist 6 years ago. I went to a school and I said, look, this is what you want. 6 years ago, I went with the magic job bridge. Was it 6 or 7 years ago that was out? And I went up to a local school and I said, here you go. I'm a salesperson. I'm a technologist. Like, I'm a technologist first and an IT guy second. And I went in to do training to enable teachers to use the technology they had. And I ended up fixing everything. So my job to start working in schools was not an IT person. It was as a trainer to help upskill the teachers. And it then became an IT guy. So I then became the IT guy in the school. So when I saw the gap on the market, I went, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. That's my superpower. And I said I wasn't going to do it 5 days a week. I'll be in your school for 1 day a week. And then the following day, I'll be in another school, and I'll split my time up between a few schools. And that's all well and good, except what I discovered is the plans are different from school to school. So I could go to one school and spend, or be told, yeah, we need to get Wi-Fi in, you spread the Wi-Fi out, and I'll spread the cost over 5 years. And then I go to another school and they say, you don't worry about that, we get somebody in, and 30,000 euro Wi-Fi, there you go. But again, nothing connected to it. So I suppose my question is, how do you stick to your plan? I mean, it's hard.
I was delighted with myself. In November 2019, I'd written my digital learning plan. I thought, okay, we're great, okay. And 3 months later, it was in tatters, you know?
Yeah.
And so we had some stuff. So how do we, and then you can sort of see the vision of what you're trying to do as well. So we were thereabouts. And I suppose you're listening to what teachers need. You're looking at, certainly at secondary level, we had to really, like, the junior cycle really drove it because of the CBAs. And I think it depends on what you're saying, Dermot, as well. It's the structure of your building. So we, like, lots of schools will have maybe 2, 3, 4 computer labs. I'm sure, I think, Hassan, listen to you, that's your experience. In our school, we've 1 computer lab. So our biggest concern was, well, how, you know, and I'm teaching computer science as well. So we had worked out there was only so many hours we could get into the computer lab. So our students had to, at junior cycle, they had to have devices, because otherwise, you know, all of those CBAs, you know, they were going to be impacted, you know. So again, it goes back to your point there, Hassan. It depends on, every school has their own sort of environmental parameters that impact how you plan for your IT and what the students need.
Because there's, what we've all discussed is, we've discussed it on a high level, whereas there's the IT coordinators now who are going, that's all well and good, and you have your magic binder sitting up on the shelves, but I have 3 laptops there. Now, one of them won't boot, another one is making a beeping noise, and I'm expected to deal with it. You know, and that's not part of my IT plan. Do you throw them out, or do you? And those are the laptops that I'm finding are falling through the cracks. So you can't throw them out, because the attitude is, actually, we'll buy more stuff.
Yeah.
And it like, there's makers up and down the country go, no, there's so much you can do with it. Give us the time and we'll show you. We'll put what Dermot was talking about, the Chromium or Neverware, which is free, goes and turns every laptop into a Chromebook. So last week I turned 10 laptops that were due for the bin, like they were 6 years old, 6 or 7 years old. And I have it on good authority that they were going towards a skip. I said, no, I'll put Neverware on them. And now students are using them as Chromebooks. So yeah, I don't like, we've all discussed the level, the planning, the ideal scenario, but what we're missing here is somebody real world and go, look, you're all well and good, but where do I start? You know, and it's we're in a strange time. And then of course include COVID and blended learning. And now you're telling me you're telling me about Google Classroom last week, and now you're telling me I have to go online from my house to my students. Like what?
Yeah, no, it is, Sean. But I suppose I think going back to that dlplanning.ie, so there's templates in there, and you know, because it is part of the school improvement plan. And so I suppose you as you have to have it, not only the demands are so different, like you have to have it in terms of an overall school improvement plan, the SIP plan, and the teaching and learning. But then you have to have the practical stuff of having, let's say, X amount of laptops, so the students who need, you know, laptops for exams have something that can work and can start. I think Dermot, you were saying that will start, you know, within the class time, as opposed to like half an hour later, you know. So these are the, you know, the nuts and bolts of it. So again, I suppose you're advocating the whole time for the needs, and I think it's that user requirements the whole time, and communication, as you said earlier, Hassan, talking and everyone listening to, you know, what they need.
What was that? Helen, what size is your school? So what kind of numbers are you?
We have, ours is we have 100, like we've 150 students.
Yeah.
We've let's say between all the teachers about, and admin, we've about 30 staff and teachers. So I worked out, basically we have about 500 devices, I reckon, because we have, you know, about 60 PCs and you know, 60 PCs. And we have then, let's assume every student has a phone, every student has a device now, and the same with the teachers. So that's what we're managing. And you know, it's like a small and medium enterprise. That's what you're you know, managing, and that's a small school. And you know, like you've got schools that have 1,000, 1,200 students. Like the demands are phenomenal. I'm sure, Hassan, you have huge schools to manage, don't you?
I do. I try not to think about the numbers, which goes against everything I suppose I believe in. But if I start thinking about the numbers, I'll freak out. Whereas I don't. There's a few things I make sure of. The internet is working, good. Switches are working, good. Then I'll assume everything else is going to work. And if it doesn't work, I've 6 years has taught me, stop trying to fix the problems, and like stop trying to find solutions for the problems and just fix the problems. So Helen comes to me with a laptop that's broken and says, my laptop won't work. There was a time where I'd sit down and I'd open it up and I go, right, time to diagnose, time to do this, I don't do that anymore. I have one of them here. I have a magic USB key. And I go, right, is your laptop, is it backed up? Yes. Do you have all your information off it? Most teachers work either cloud or server. And I go, click in. By the time they go away and have a coffee, by the time they come back, I have a fresh laptop for them. There you go. Good luck. USB key back in the pencil case. I'm off. So I don't bother trying to figure out where the problem occurred, how the problem occurred, because a lot of the time it's just technology being stupid or just not working or an update not going through. That doesn't need to be solved. That just needs to be fixed. And there's loads of websites that do that. So my goal now at schools, the bigger schools, is I started looking around and there's only, we'll say, 4 particular brands of laptop. So I'll go and I'll take an image, 4 images, and that covers every single school device in the school. And when I get something that's broken, unless it's physically broken, I'll have it turned around in 15 minutes. That's in most schools. In other schools, it doesn't happen like that because it's a pick and mix of, you couldn't clone every single PC because there's so many different ones around the school. So you just need to deal with the issue as it arises. But the end goal for anybody starting into this, and I've spoken to a few, if you walk into a site for the first time, find the good computer, make an audit of all the computers, and then just take an image, a good image. And at the end of the year or at the end of the term, wipe them. Your computer room is a prime example of that. Your computer room should be wiped twice a year. There's no need for it. Like, just wipe it, fresh installs of everything, and the whole process will take 2 weeks. And you're going into the new year with a fresh computer room. If you have a computer room, again, don't think of the big numbers. Think of the small numbers. It's one computer room, not a computer room with 40 devices in it. So as long as there's that one brand is spread around the computer room, all you need is one image. So the call comes in, PC won't work. You go, yeah, no problem. Stick in a USB key or a Windows 7 disk or a Windows 10 disk, re-image everything. And there's a great site I'll show you called Ninite, if I can share my screen. This guy here, this website, Ninite, when you have, if you have a lab situation and you wipe your computers, the hardest thing about wiping a computer isn't reloading the operating system, it's finding all the bits of software that was on it. And then you have to install them one by one. Whereas this website, you go and you say, right, my brand new computer, I want it to have Chrome, I want it to have Firefox, I want it to have an antivirus on it, and I want to have Zoom as a new addition to this. I look at, and I go on and I go to utilities. I want TeamViewer because I want to be able to log into it remotely, VNC because I want to log into it remotely. And then I just scroll down to the bottom. I have my developer tools as well. Visual Studio Code, amazing if you're teaching coding at school. Mm-hmm. So I just click on that and I go get Ninite. And when I click that, the website packages together a download and gives me an executable, which I then put on a USB key. So my process is put in your Windows 10 disk, wipe your computer, which takes about 20 minutes, 30 minutes from wipe and reload. Take your USB key, fire this in, install everything from your USB key, and within an hour you have a fresh computer. You don't need to figure out what the problem is. And I think that's a really nice solution to solving computer room issues.
Hassan, that is amazing. That is brilliant website.
So yeah, let somebody, if they land a computer in front of you, we have a tendency to go, to summarize, they land the computer in front of you, don't try and fix it. Just look at the computer and bring it back to life, whatever it takes, with your USB key. And these USB keys then will, you have them forever and ever and ever.
Hassan, you've like explored like sort of, you know, the practicalities of being at the coalface of, you know, in computer labs and fixing laptops, and you know, how you got, you know, you've explained earlier about how you got into working in schools in this role. But now we're going to shift it to a more educational philosophical level. Would that be fair to say, Dermot? And we're going to hand you over to Dermot for the 8 questions.
Thank you very much, Helen. And I suppose one of the insights which we hope will be of huge interest to us here is that, as Hassan has mentioned, he is an educational technologist. And so maybe he hasn't been constrained by the shackles of teacher training, Helen, that we both experienced, which is obviously positive and was a wonderful experience. But Hassan will have that unique perspective on it, and it will add very rich insight into the club, Hassan, or the people who have boldly gone before you. Okay, so question one, Hassan. Who or what triggered your interest in the educational use of technology?
I always had an interest in the educational use of technology because I felt it was something that I missed in school. I was always the one in the computer lab, even though there wasn't what it could be a computer lab. But what really brought me forward, what made me turn from being a salesperson and a trainer to where I am 6 years ago was CESI conference Teach Meet 6, maybe 7 years ago. I met Bianca Nigrogan there, and she had a makey, and she showed this makey. I went, look at, I'm an IT guy, I know everything. And I was in complete awe. I just went, she took that device and she's using it perfectly as an educational tool. The end. I was hooked from then on, and I haven't looked back since. That's the exact moment.
Ah, fantastic. And she obviously had such a huge impact on so many of us, not just limited to the CESI crowd, and particularly the kids that she taught as well. Yeah,
it was to hear her talk about the engaging with the kids. I would have, again, an IT guy, I didn't know that world. But to hear and to see the videos of the kids interacting with these devices, and I honestly took a step back and went, I want some of that. That's what I'm missing. And that was it. I remember the moment, the exact moment.
So question two then, Hassan. So what is your primary motivation behind your educational use of technology?
I'm dyslexic. Coming from Kuwait to Ireland, I felt that I fell through the cracks in school, and technology brought me out of myself. So there was a computer there, and the teacher knew in the class, if I want to keep him quiet, get him fixing a computer, or get him do something with computers because he likes computers. And it was then that I saw the educational use of technology, because all of a sudden I was learning coding. And by the way, a point, I never did computers in college. Like radio and engineering and TV was my background. So I was learning from it. I never read a book outside of school until I discovered Audible. And now I'm flat out, like this new world. So my primary motivation is me. I want others to get the cool factor, to go, oh, that's amazing. I want to be able to help others get to help teachers enable others to find other Hassans in the crowd.
Question three then, Hassan. Describe in your experience effective educational use of technology in formal education.
Effective, I struggle with that. Effective educational use of technology. So I honestly don't know. A whiteboard can be effective use of technology, educational use of technology. Cubes, marbles, electronics, coding, computers. But I don't know. I struggled with that one. I struggled with question three an awful lot. And I couldn't figure out, because there's so many in my experience that are effective educational uses for technology. But is there one particular one? I don't know. I can't. There can't be one. I hope there's not one. I'm a technologist. Everything can be used for educational use. Every piece of technology.
Describe in your experience effective learning outcomes from the educational use of technology.
Okay, so I think learning outcomes and educational use of technology in the same sentence is a bit strange, because I feel that learning outcomes need to be decided, and then technology enables a good learning outcome, or should the technology enable a good learning outcome? So describing your experience, effective learning outcomes from educational use of technology, in my humble opinion, is if you have an outcome, then determine if I can use technology to create an effective outcome. But don't use technology for the sake of it.
Very good. Question 5 then, Hassan, what is your philosophy of education?
Geez, I hate you. What is my philosophy of education? And I could just see Richard Millwood's face right now. I'd love to have a wordy answer to this, but I don't. I love education. I love learning. And may there never be a time where I go, I don't want to learn something new. So it doesn't matter what it is. I just want to always be learning. I hated school, but loved learning. Okay,
then in your experience, how is knowledge transferred, Hassan?
I don't know. I think this one is beyond me, to be honest, because I don't know if I understand the transfer of knowledge or how knowledge is transferred, other than in maker spaces, which I'm involved with as well. I think there's a great transfer of knowledge there, where it's not your traditional, I'm going to go up and I'm going to chalk and talk, and you have to learn it. You hear, break it, fix it, figure out how it works. I think that's good. But I honestly, I struggle to understand the term transfer of knowledge, only that you have knowledge in your head. How do you transfer it to my head? You can either tell me what that knowledge is, if it's coding, for example, or you can give me a micro bit and say, make the lights turn on when the temperature is 7. And I have to go and figure out how to do that. That then transfers the knowledge to me.
And what pedagogy? And I guess that we may have hit on this already. So what pedagogy best supports the educational use of technology, and why?
I think back to question 6. I would tie that in there. Again, the word pedagogy scares me because I only learned what it was a few years ago as a standalone word. But I would tie that into question 6. So is there one specific pedagogy? I don't know if there is one best. I think there's a methodology, how best to get back to the transfer of knowledge. But I don't know about pedagogy. I think it's beyond my expertise as yet.
Okay, formal education in the 21st century should look like, because?
Well, it has to change. I said once, years ago, 6 years ago, I want to reinvent the classroom. Innocently, a throwaway comment. It has to be reinvented. What it should look like, I think there should be, or I feel there should be more, there should be different learning. It should cater for different learning styles. So I am a big fan of the maker movement. Make it, break it, see how it works. Not that I wouldn't be academically driven. It's just when you don't read a book for so long, and then all of a sudden you discover Audible, you need to take it all in. I wonder what I would have been had I read more in school. So I feel that formal education should cater for more people like me, if that's not very Mayfain, as in people who might have fallen through the cracks. It should be more maker-based, more project-based learning. I feel is good, and I feel there's great outcomes, there's great sense of achievements to project-based learning, project-based learning projects, if you like.
That's really interesting, because like Helen as well, like Helen, you've come from an industry background, and I wonder, do people who come in to the education system from a professional background with an experience of a different profession, does that help them to view the education system then?
I think it helps them, Dermot. I think it definitely helps them to go, oh, right. But it is so hard to avoid the system. You can try, and you can try to make a difference, but it's I used the term earlier on, it's swimming in molasses. It's so hard, and it can be so soul destroying for somebody who goes in and goes, yeah, I can make a difference. I went in, I'm going to reinvent the classroom. That's what I want to do. I want to reinvent the classroom because I can see where a thing can be done. I can see how to engage students with the device, the thing, the whatever. Why can't I reinvent the classroom? And then I go and I sit in a car for a 3-hour journey with you to CESI conference in Dublin, and you say, blow me away by saying, yeah, but a monkey dancing in front of the class will engage the students. But do they learn any, like, what's the outcome of that? So look at, I think it's very hard. I think it's doable. I think it gives industry people, I can't speak for Helen, but for myself, it gives me a really nice insight into, oh, right, this is how it works. But it's very hard to change the system. It's very hard to turn that juggernaut. That's only if you're thinking small, like me, like reinventing the classroom.
Oh, you're right. Like Helen, you've seen.
Yeah, I'm just thinking here because I'm just thinking of what you did last week, with what you're doing with your students right now, Dermot, where you have them working collaboratively, working on projects. And at the moment they're doing them remotely, but even I know from listening to you before, when you're in the class, and like Tony Riley was talking about that steam room. So there are real opportunities, and it is being done. And it makes it very exciting to see when you're working, in this sort of messier, noisier classroom, but you're still doing a huge amount. And certainly I would see it with the projects that I do. And I know from seeing other teachers in my school that, I think the junior cycle, and there certainly at secondary level, it'll be very interesting, at the primary level, and, I'm sure it will be really positive towards moving towards that more kind of project-based, messy, constructivist pedagogy, where, all people of, and you have different roles as well. I see that in my projects, and those roles are really important because, you might have one student who's, real hands-on. Okay, I'm looking from a lens of coding and stuff like that. They could be doing that. But then you have another student who's really, really good at organizing, and you can have all the best coders in the world, but you have to execute it and you have to deliver. And you need someone there that can manage that. Yeah. And then you have somebody else who is really detail driven and, rigorous and method, really can see, and they could be really good at testing. And then you have another, person who'd be really sort of visionary in terms of making the artwork or the production or the audio or something. So I really think that projects, regardless of what the subject is, I'm looking through this computer science lens, there's just so many opportunities. And I think certainly junior cycle and, TY, and hopefully certainly at Leaving Cert Computer Science, that's where we're at. And, we'll just see what's going to come down the tracks in terms of reviews of the curriculum. And, I would say it's going to be, you're going to reap the benefit, Dermot, with the primary school curriculum, the revision that they're doing there, That's my thought on it,
That's really interesting what you're saying there, Hassan and Helen, because we are building 2 new classrooms. And when you say reinvent the classroom, that's what my last question is about. Like, what would your image be of a 21st century learning classroom? If you could, Hassan, we'll say there's 4 walls. I think walls will still be part of a classroom. And I'm not being that flippant there, what would you, if you were the interior designer, Hassan, what would you
see? I didn't see what the classroom looks like. The fact that we think walls straight away, I think the learning environment can be anywhere. So it's less about the learning classroom and more about the learning environment is how I look at it. So when I say I want to reinvent the classroom, I want to reinvent the learning environment. So that's whether that be building open maker spaces in libraries that anybody can go to and anybody can learn to 3D print, or your classroom. There is a tendency to go, do you know what we need? We need a STEM room, and we need water and electricity and fire, and that's the new classroom. It's not necessarily the case. We need to pull back a little bit, and it's more to do with what we're learning and the bits of information we're learning rather than how we are learning. Or maybe that's the other way around. So I think I can learn anywhere. I can learn at home. I can learn. Now there's less structure to that, and I don't know, and I don't have an answer on how you would create a bit of structure around learning, because you need some structure there. I don't know that, but I do know that we shouldn't have to go to a classroom for 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day to learn. I hate doing that, but learn.
Well, here's the question. Given the times that we're in it, I mean, I know we're all, and I mean, there's we all want to get back to school because it's the whole social aspect of school, you know, and that's so critical, and just the laughs and the fun. But maybe, you know, there'll be like, once this is all, we've all been vaccinated and stuff, but that will be an opportunity maybe to look back, and we can reflect and say, well, maybe we can chop and change it a bit. Like sometimes we are at home, or some students are at home. You know, we have the technology. We've proven what we can do, having been catapulted into a situation. So think of what we can do if we actually plan for it. You know?
Yeah, I that's why the lockdown excites me in that it's triggering something. So if a student studies French at home, so I take your French class, Helen, and I'm doing my honors French at home. How does that apply to if I'm a girl and I'm in a girls' school and they don't do physics, but the boys' school do physics? So why can't I do physics at home, but from the boys' school? Even though it's not part of my school. Does that make sense? So why can't it be open like that? Why do I have to be told, no, you cannot do physics because you're in the girls' school?
So I think I remember seeing one of the island schools had begun that process.
Okay.
They had no physics teacher, and so what they were doing was they were connecting in with one of the schools on the mainland who had a physics teacher. And I think a lot of what we are actually talking about here, it's happening already.
Okay.
Like I think, how can I put it? That we're like, when we look around, we only see what we can see. Obviously, we only see what we're exposed to, for example. And there's a lot happening in so many different schools in so many different counties across Ireland at the moment, and we're only, you know, our view is very, very small, and it's biased towards what we're saying, what we're doing. And there's a school in Sligo where they don't have a curriculum, and this was set up, I think this is 2.5 years ago, and where the kids come in, they have a time, they have to be in before 10:30, and they can't leave before, it might be 2:00 or something like that. But when they go in, there is no set curriculum. They just approach the teacher and say, I want to work on this. And they might work on it for the day. It might be for the next week, for the next 2 weeks. And it's a fascinating concept, because it's a lot of what we would say, or where we would say that education, how can I put it? That's possibly the dream scenario for any educationalist, isn't it? Where you have a child who wants to go to a place, they want to work on a particular area of their own skills deficit, and they have somebody there who can guide them through that process. Like, I think that's a lot of what we talk about. The outdoor explorers, Hassan, they're in Mayo, for example. They don't have an inside building, Helen.
Yeah, yeah.
They're just preschoolers, and regardless of what the weather is, they are
They're out
outside.
there. Yeah.
That's my childhood.
Yeah. And
That's
it is,
my niece. That's where my niece goes to school.
it is wonderful. Yeah, it is brilliant. And they have one roofed area, if you know what I mean, where I guess they can cover whatever, a shelter, but they're outdoors doing that. In the classroom, then there is the Ashter, which is fantastic. Like, it's play-based learning, it's collaborative, constructivist, it's everything that you want it to be. And I think that we're just in that zone now where the shift is happening. And I think, like, even as you said there, Hassan, that 6 years ago your job didn't exist.
Yeah.
And I would say that, like, in 15 or 20 years' time, you will see that you were one of the early adopters, or the kind of early trendsetters. There's a better word there, if you know what I mean. For moving into that space. And I think people had mentioned before how it will become necessary to have a specialized educational technologist within a school, or employed by school people who are adept at the systems management. Because, Helen, do you ever find that maybe some of the IT repairs that you're doing, that limits your capacity for teaching?
Well, it's a constant juggle. I mean, it is, it's a constant juggle, and you're sort of saying you're switching between one or the other. Now, the way my whole approach is, everything I do, like, say, from the IT coordinator point of view, feeds into what I'm teaching. So there are times when you're really hard pressed, but I always say, well, I'm learning the whole time, every day, something new, at least one thing new every day. So that's the positive of it. But you are a constant juggle. But I know as Adrienne would say it as well, is that also within a school, like teachers or students, and especially now, they need to feel reassured that there's someone or a group of people that they can go to when there's a problem.
Yes.
Because if you were working in industry, if you were working in, it doesn't matter what type of company, there's an IT person there that can help them, because there's always technical problems, and so, like, from printers breaking down to yourselves. So, and that also like right now, one of the key things was when we came back to school in September was well-being, but also digital well-being, that because yourself how frustrating it is if things aren't working, and that is, so if you know that there's someone there that will either help you and get it fixed, as Hassan is saying, or know someone who can get it sorted for you within then you're okay. You know what I mean? You're in a good place. So that's, I say, every IT coordinator in the country, in the world, would say that.
Yeah, I just think I think it's very fair that, and I've been involved in the sales pitches to the bigger schools back in the day. And the question is, don't worry about the IT. The IT is for the IT company to deal with that. And you're going, that's grand if you have an IT company, but if you don't have an IT company, I meet so many IT coordinators who know more about the internal workings of printers than I will ever know, or they've forgotten more about stuff than I will ever know. I don't think it's a teacher's job, and I don't think I don't think it's unfair of me to say it is not your job to make sure that the printer drum is sitting right in the printer. There needs to be somebody in school to alleviate that, so the teachers can get on with the job of being, with the IT coordinator as the technologist in the school, Dermot. That's the IT coordinator. So every school does have a technologist. Every school does not have on-site support, and I think that's very unfair, very, very unfair that we ask IT coordinators.
Can I ask a question while we have you here, Hassan? What is coming down the line? Is there any insights you have, or anything you've seen that you haven't seen in a classroom yet, but you're kind of going, yeah, that would be awesome, or that would be?
Do you know what? nothing, over the last year, we had a huge acceleration in online, everything pushed to the cloud. If you had asked me that question this time last year, I would have said, you know what, the platforms are really kicking ass and taking numbers. The Google platforms, the Microsoft platforms, the Moodle has, I don't know where it came from. It fell asleep for a couple of years and now it's back. The iPad management platforms, managing the MDMs, they've upped their game. We're going to see less about the brand platform and more about, what was it? Somebody said at a conference, I'm a platform agnostic. It's going to matter. You do it very well in your schools, Dermot, where you can be working on OneNote with kids and then they decide to go on a Google thing. So the server is going to go, this big, giant, power guzzling behemoth. Like the power those things use is ridiculous. They're going to go. They're not going to be no more. So you're going to have a switch, just like your school, where you have a giant switch sitting on the wall, and your internet is fed into that. And yes, if the switch goes down, your internet goes down. But if your server goes down, your learning pauses. There's more coming in. There's a maker movement, and I'm seeing it everywhere now. There's more project-based learning things happening, and they're happening everywhere, and it's very fragmented. So as a maker and to be involved with Maker Meet, I can either challenge the things and do workshops in schools, or I can take a step back, and myself and Chris can take a step back and go, we need to join the dots. So the colleges need to be talking to the schools, need to be talking to the primary schools, and we'll facilitate that meeting. That's where it's going, project-based learning. So when the student goes to Helen or goes to yourself and says, I want to learn Latin because, you're going to go, well, actually, that's where you go and then you can learn that, and I'll facilitate your learning. More and more of that is happening. And I can see that being the exciting thing that we talk about in 5 years' time. I could be wrong. I could be still turning stuff off and back on again. I hope I'm not.
And any fancy technologies, any fancy tools that you've seen?
Do you know what? At the moment, this has changed my life. The Apple Pencil, the Surface Pen. I used one for a while. OneNote is amazing. The fact that the sheet goes on forever and ever and ever. But I reverted back to my iPad. Yeah, as an educational tool, and I think anybody who knows me knows my colors are fairly well nailed to the mast. As an educational tool, the iPad, with the current ecosystem that it has, outshines everything. Absolutely everything. My only issue is I don't want Apple to give it away for free. I just want them not to charge as much for it. I know it's a premium machine, but it's the stuff you could do with it. It will enable, set up correctly in a school environment, it will enable any student to do any learning at any time. The Surface is amazing, but it's just not quite there. The Chromebook, amazing services. Like they're Google, they know everything. So I've decided to use OneNote, which is a Microsoft product, on my iPad with the support of G Suite. So Google services on an iPad with a couple of Microsoft apps in there. I'm done. That's the future.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. What do you think, Helen? iPads, would you? Oh, that was a bold claim, Hassan.
I know, yeah, I know. Take
So
your shots
my
now.
approach is you choose what you want. It's in our school, that's what we said. We BYOD, we set that from the get-go. You bring in what you want, because we have the system, we have the infrastructure that can support that. Now there are challenges because of that, and I'd say our biggest challenge is management of the devices, like let's say classroom management systems. Okay, so you've got software to manage the your PCs or whatever, but it's managing devices and, you know, all of that filtering and stuff like that, and keeping students on task. I think if we can crack that, then we're in a really good place. And I'll be delighted if someone can advise me on that, or Hassan, if you know,
Yeah,
I mean,
well, see, this is the thing. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because we could get lost down it. But like from a device management point of view, that is key. That's device management is broadband into your school, gigabit switch, MDM, then devices. It fits in there. So the MDM it depends on what you want. So the MDM for the Chromebooks is amazing. It turns them on and off and it keeps the students in check. The same for the iPads, turns them on and off. And if you have a group of iPads, you're not going to have Hass down the back listening to whatever, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because the teacher at the front of the class can just go, yeah, you're not listening to me. Eyes up on me. It's the same as opening up a book. So the issues are the same. The technology has changed. What's available for Windows devices, that's the hard part.
yeah,
So Windows devices have always been the weak link there. And Surface came along and I thought they had an MDM, but they don't. It's not worth talking about. But what there is a thing called VNC. And VNC is something I use. So if I have VNC installed in my computer lab, in one of my computer labs, and I go in, and if I happen to be working with some of the guys in there, whether it's maker stuff or we're coding, in fact I have an app on my computer or on my iPad, and I can open up the app on my iPad when I'm in the school, and I can see each of the computers. And that to me keeps the students on task. I can see what they're doing, and it just keeps them pointing in the right direction. I don't care what they're doing. I just need them to be focused on the project at hand.
but they're the devices. Are they the PCs, Hassan?
VNC is ideal for a PC environment because it sits beautifully on a PC environment, and it'll sit, the server itself, which is this guy, he'll sit on any device you want. So you can have it on my laptop. I have a server here and I have a server on my laptop, and no matter where I am in the world, I can click on, log in, and I can see that computer lab. And I can make changes from my side. Not the only, because I'll get shot for this, but it is the most effective MDM-ish ISH that I've seen for Windows devices in a Windows environment.
Okay.
Because it does all the cool stuff that an MDM does, which is shut the device down when the student is not engaging with you. You can control the device, so it doesn't matter whether Helen takes that computer out of the computer room and takes it home. As soon as that computer hits the internet, there it is.
And could you like say on there, let's say, because my students have a mix, you know what I mean? So like there's Surface Pros, there's iPads, there's everything. So that's the real challenge there. So could I install that, you know, could we get that installed on their devices, permission, once we sort out all the permissions, you know?
Yes.
Okay.
To the best of my knowledge, you can. It's cross-platform.
Okay. So it's cross-platform. Okay. All right. So
VNC. Now remember, it's not an MDM, so it's not a mobile device management system.
No, it's just like to turn
a management tool.
Yeah, it's a so it's just, let's say, you know, we want a teacher to say, okay, we only want students to look at something for about 10 minutes or something like that. So you just open it up for the 10 minutes and you just turn it off, you know. And it's the same with, you know, like students' mobile phones, you know what I mean? Because it's the management of it, because it's very hard. And the challenges are, I suppose, here's the question: what are the challenges that we're in? So there's hotspots, and just as I say, managing the devices. They're the real key issues, you know.
There was a school that I did some support with in the UK, and we tied the network down. So everything was tied down. Students could get access to the internet, and we thought everything was great. But really all we were doing was tying down the teachers, because the students just turned off Wi-Fi and went on hotspot. You know, so realize what you're trying to do. If you're trying to, as long as there's an understanding, I think if you give, most of the students I've worked with, 99.9% of the students all have respect. Like, they have respect for the school uniform they have on. They'll have respect when they're in, but you need to control that within class. And control is a very strong word, but you need to focus their attention on you rather than their device. And that's where the likes of this comes in, because you can get some really, really expensive management tools, and I've seen them all. And honestly, all the teacher does is turn off the screen, look at me, turn on the screen, and away you go.
That's not what we want. We just want a light switch, you know what I mean? So, you know, you're in there. It's like if you're in Teams chat at the moment, you know, you just mute off, mute on. And it should be the same with devices, and it should be that simple.